Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. This happened just last night, and I'm now in a good enough headspace to actually post this. I'm not quite sure if it qualifies as pro, but it definitely isn't petty. I'm a professional driver. On the roads in the US, there are different truck stops throughout the country that have a pay-to-park system. Usually about 10 to 20% of the lot is marked off as reserved, with each space costing between $15 to $25. The truck stop where this took place had parking for $20, which is relatively cheap for a guaranteed spot. The spots are reserved for 24 hours, starting at 4 p.m. local time and extending to 3 p.m. the following afternoon. I knew I'd have a late-night delivery, so I arrived at the truck stop around 3:30 p.m. and paid for a reserved spot. I approached the manager on duty, a woman named Sarah. "Hey, I've got a delivery up the road tonight," I explained. "I'll be back once it's done, but I should still be able to clear out the spot by tomorrow afternoon." Sarah nodded. "No problem. I'll mark the spot as sold when you leave. That way, if someone else tries to reserve it, I can check my notes and deny the sale." 11:30 p.m. rolled around, and I took off for my delivery. I didn't get out of that facility until 3 a.m. the next morning. Exhausted, I drove back to the truck stop to reclaim my paid-for spot, only to find that all the reserved parking spaces were full. I called the manager on duty, a guy named Mike this time, and after giving him my info, I explained the situation. "All the spots are full, Mike. Someone's parked in a spot they haven't paid for." Mike sighed. "All right, I'll send Jake out to start checking trucks." The culprit turned out to be from a company known for their bright green trailers, and he was a company driver. I watched from my vantage point in the fuel island, where I'd been instructed to temporarily park, as Jake started banging on the driver's door. "Hey, you're parked illegally! You need to move!" Jake shouted. The driver answered the door with a beer in one hand and what looked suspiciously like a joint in the other. I rolled down my window to hear better. "Who the hell are you to tell me where I can park?" The driver slurred angrily. Jake stood his ground. "I work here, buddy. Move your truck, or we're calling the police and a tow company." The driver's face turned red. "Screw you!" he yelled, slamming the door in Jake's face. Jake pulled out his phone and dialed. Within minutes, police cars pulled up, their lights flashing. I'd worked for this company before, so I knew their policies inside and out. Alcoholic beverages? Not allowed in the cab. Anything that isn't a cigarette or a cigar and a lighter, also not allowed. The real kicker? Firearms of any kind, especially loaded ones, are absolutely forbidden. This driver had all that, plus some other illegal substances in his cab. I watched as he was hauled away in handcuffs, his truck towed shortly after. Once things calmed down, I made a call to the company's safety director, Lisa. "Hi, Lisa. I wanted to let you know that one of your rigs is going to be in an impound lot. The driver's been arrested for having some illegal items in his truck." Lisa's voice was tight with frustration. "Thank you for letting us know. He'll definitely lose his job over this, especially the alcohol and drugs." As I finally parked in my rightful spot, I couldn't help but shake my head. I guess that driver played the screw around and find out card, and it cost him his career. Some people just never learn. The next one is an entitled people's story. I never thought I'd be the type of person to have problems with my neighbors. I always tried to be friendly, waving hello when I saw people on the street and keeping my yard tidy, but everything changed when Karen moved in next door. At first, I was excited to have a new neighbor. The house had been empty for months, and I was looking forward to meeting whoever bought it. The day Karen moved in, I baked a batch of chocolate chip cookies and went over to introduce myself. "Hi there," I called out, seeing a woman unpacking boxes from a moving van. "I'm Sarah, your next-door neighbor. I wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood." The woman turned around and I got my first look at Karen. She was probably in her late 40s with bottle blonde hair cut in an angled bob. She wore yoga pants and a t-shirt that said "Live, Laugh, Love" in swirly script. "Oh, how nice," she said, eyeing the plate of cookies. "I'm Karen. I hope those are gluten-free. I have a very sensitive stomach." I blinked, taken aback. "Oh, no, they're just regular chocolate chip cookies. I'm sorry, I didn't know." Karen waved her hand dismissively. "It's fine. I'll just give them to the movers. Did you want something?" "I just wanted to say welcome to the neighborhood," I said, my smile feeling a bit forced now. "Let me know if you need anything as you're getting settled in." "Actually," Karen said, "there is something. Your hedges are encroaching on my property line. I'm going to need you to trim them back at least 2 feet. I frowned, confused. "The hedges? But they've been there for years, well within my property line." Karen's eyes narrowed. "Well, I don't like how they look from my side of the fence. Just take care of it, okay? I don't want to have to involve the homeowner association." With that, she turned and walked back into her house, leaving me standing there holding my plate of rejected cookies. As I trudged back home, I had a sinking feeling this wasn't going to be the last of my problems with Karen. I was right. Over the next few weeks, Karen found something new to complain about almost every day. My wind chimes were too noisy. The color I painted my mailbox was garish. She even accused my cat of using her flower beds as a litter box. I tried my best to be accommodating at first. I took down the wind chimes and repainted the mailbox a more neutral color. I even started keeping my cat indoors, even though I was pretty sure he wasn't the culprit Karen was accusing him of being. But nothing was ever good enough for Karen. She'd find new things to nitpick and criticize, and then she started coming into my yard. The first time I caught her, she was marching across my lawn with a pair of hedge clippers. "Karen!" I called out, rushing outside. "What are you doing?" "Oh, Sarah," she said, not looking the least bit embarrassed at being caught. "I told you these hedges needed to be trimmed. Since you couldn't be bothered to do it yourself, I'm taking care of it." I stepped between her and my hedges. "Karen, you can't just come onto my property and start cutting things down. These hedges are on my side of the property line. If you have an issue, we need to discuss it civilly." Karen rolled her eyes. "Don't be so dramatic. I'm improving the look of the neighborhood. You should be thanking me." I stood my ground. "Karen, I'm asking you nicely to leave my property. If you have concerns, we can talk about them later, but you need to go now." She huffed and puffed, but eventually turned and stomped back to her own yard. I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that was the end of it. I was wrong. Over the next few weeks, I caught Karen in my yard multiple times. She'd be examining my flowers, peering in my windows, or poking around my shed. Each time I confronted her, she'd have some excuse about checking for pests or making sure I was maintaining community standards. I tried talking to her calmly. I put up no trespassing signs. I even installed a security camera. Nothing deterred her. The final straw came one Saturday morning. I was sleeping in when a noise woke me up. I looked out my bedroom window to see Karen in my backyard, yanking up the rose bushes I'd planted in memory of my grandmother. I saw red. I threw on some clothes and ran outside. "Karen!" I yelled. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" She barely glanced up. "These bushes are an eyesore. I'm doing you a favor by removing them." "Those are my rose bushes on my property," I shouted. "You have no right to touch them." Karen straightened up, hands on her hips. "As president of the homeowner association, I have every right to enforce our community standards. Your yard is bringing down property values." I was so angry I could barely see straight. "Karen, for the last time, we are not part of an homeowner association. You made that up. Now get off my property before I call the police." "Go ahead," she sneered. "Call them. I'd love to explain to them how you're the one harassing me." So I did. I called the police and reported Karen for trespassing and destruction of property. While we waited for them to arrive, Karen ranted about how I was being unreasonable and she was just trying to help the neighborhood. I ignored her and focused on taking pictures of the damage she'd done to my roses. When the police showed up, Karen immediately launched into her version of events, claiming I was the one harassing her. But I had evidence on my side. I showed the officers my security camera footage of Karen's repeated trespassing. I had photos of the damage she'd done, and I had copies of our property records proving we weren't part of any homeowner association. The officers listened to both sides, then pulled Karen aside to speak with her privately. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could see Karen's face getting redder and redder. Finally, one of the officers came over to me. "Ma'am, we've warned your neighbor about trespassing and vandalism. She's agreed to leave your property and not return. If she does, call us immediately and we'll arrest her. Do you want to press charges for the damage to your rose bushes?" I thought about it for a moment. Part of me wanted Karen to face consequences for her actions, but mostly, I just wanted this nightmare to be over. "Not at this time," I said. "But I do want a restraining order." The officer nodded. "We can help you file for one. In the meantime, we'll be increasing patrols in your neighborhood." I watched with a mixture of relief and satisfaction as the police escorted Karen back to her house. She glared at me the whole way, but I just waved cheerfully. Over the next few weeks, things were blessedly quiet. I replanted my grandmother's roses and enjoyed my yard in peace. I saw Karen watching me from her window sometimes, but she never set foot on my property again. About a month after the incident, I was surprised to see a moving van pull up to Karen's house. I watched as she supervised movers packing up her belongings. As I was getting my mail later that day, Karen approached me. She looked uncomfortable. "Sarah," she said stiffly, "I wanted to let you know I'm moving." "Oh?" I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Any particular reason?" Karen's mouth twisted like she'd bitten into something sour. "My behavior was brought to the attention of my employer. They felt it reflected poorly on the company. I've been transferred to another branch." I nodded, unsure what to say. Part of me felt a little bad for her, but a bigger part was just relieved. Well, I said finally, I hope things work out for you in your new place. Karen nodded curtly and turned to go. She paused, then looked back at me. Your roses, she said. They're actually quite lovely. With that, she walked away. I stood there for a moment, processing what had just happened. Then I smiled to myself and went to tend to my garden. As I knelt by my grandmother's rose bushes, enjoying the peace and quiet of my yard, I reflected on the past few months. It had been a stressful, frustrating experience dealing with Karen. But in the end, standing up for myself and my property had paid off. I made a mental note to bake some cookies for my other neighbors. After all, you never know when you might need allies in dealing with difficult people. And this time, I'd make sure to have a gluten-free option available, just in case. The next one is a petty revenge story. We recently bought a new cat tower. We have 5 cats who play hard, and the old tower was definitely showing use. The cats had torn up the carpet in sisal, vomited in one of the cubes, and decapitated the hanging mouse, whose name is Earl because why not? We set up the new tower, and after asking around to our friends, couldn't find anyone who wanted it, so we took it out to the curb to get rid of it. Large trash pickup was coming up, so we figured if anyone wanted it, they would have plenty of time to grab it before trash pickup. In our neighborhood, as long as the item is not on the curb for more than a week, you won't get cited for having trash in your yard. No big deal, right? Oh no, it's a big deal because Karen and Kevin have decided they want the tower. I work from home, but my office is in the back of my house. We have a Ring camera, and around 10 a.m. one morning the doorbell rings. I am in a meeting with my boss, so I check the app, see that I don't know who these people, Kevin and Karen, are, and go back to my meeting. About 45 minutes later, the doorbell rings again. Now, I'm out of my meeting, and since I'm expecting packages, I check the app, see that it's the delivery guy, and then head out front to grab my packages off the porch. I hear the notification going off on my phone as I'm opening the door, and there stands Kevin and Karen with my packages and the cat tower. Kevin is holding my packages. Me, can I help you? Kevin, we are interested in the cat tower. Me, go for it. It's been left out for large trash. You can have it. May I have my packages, please? Karen, the carpet and the sisal on the tower is torn. I'm going to need you to fix that before we take the tower. And there is vomit on it. That needs to be cleaned as well. Me, I'm not going to fix anything on the tower. We are throwing it away. If you want the tower, take the tower. If not, it will be picked up later this week with large trash. Now may I please have my packages? Kevin, obviously realizing I'm not concerned at all about the state of the cat tower. Well, we still want the cat tower. I'm just going to leave it on your porch and we will come back with our truck this weekend and pick it up. He is still holding my damn packages. Me, that won't work for us. See, we are trying to get rid of the tower and I don't want it on my porch, which is why it is on the curb. So, if you want the tower and you aren't going to take it right now, I'm not going to hold it for you. Please give me my packages. About this time, my phone started ringing and I needed to get back to work. But I wasn't going to leave without my packages. Just as I'm about to get angry with these people, my retired military grizzled biker-looking neighbor pulls up in his pickup truck. He is a big pussycat, but very protective of us, and especially our 2 daughters. My neighbor calls over to me and starts heading over to where we are standing on my porch. I guess Kevin got nervous, so at that point he shoved my packages at me and then said, well, just leave the tower on the porch and we will pick it up when we can. Yeah, that's not going to work for me, and when Kevin and Karen walk off, I turned to my neighbor and asked him to help me carry the damn cat tower back down to the curb. A little while later, I had to run an errand, and when I got back, the stupid cat tower was back on my porch. Y'all, what the absolute stupid hell. My kid, F19, got back from class a little while later and asked why the cat tower is back on the porch. I told her the story. She rolled her eyes and groaned, and I went back to work. About 30 minutes later, she came into my office laughing. Me, what did you do? MK, took the cat tower back down to the curb. Me, how? That thing is heavy as hell. MK, it was really easy once I took it apart and put all the hardware in this Ziploc bag that accidentally fell into the trash can with the used cat litter. So if Kevin and Karen want the cat tower, it's still available, but they will have to go dumpster diving for the hardware. The next one is a malicious compliance story. Years back in my early days of employment, early 2000, when I worked on the loading dock, we were expecting a big load of tech and products for the new office layout, some fancy upgrades and big tech sending the latest computers and network equipment, plenty of expensive equipment, and my boss told me to keep the trucks coming and going as smooth as possible, so we had the team on with a few extras. My responsibility was to get the unloaded pallets and stack them out of the way and ready for return to their owner. Company-owned pallets have to be returned. 6 a.m. I recaffeinated and started the forklift, and got to stacking the CHEP pallets ready for collection. Around 8:30 one of the main representatives came in early and parked on the dock. This was a problem. As the trucks were scheduled for roll-in at 9 a.m., I asked him to use the main car park he told me to duck of and do my job. My job was to make sure the truckies had unobstructed access to the loading dock. I interpreted this as, I am too important, put it somewhere for me. So to keep from damaging the car too much, I slid a CHEP pallet under it and got to lifting it, and I put the offending BMW up on a stack of pallets, the entire time singing Nothing Lifts Like a Crown for picking it up and putting it down. We had a Crown forklift. The rest of the crew were in stitches laughing. Many of the truckies rolled up and knew immediately I was on duty. Those guys always had the best stories from. Some of them had a good chuckle and made off with a fresh cup of coffee. The day was going smoothly and we worked that forklift dry as the last pallet came off the tank on the forklift emptied. As I dropped off the last pallet, well, we got that unpacked and used a tug, small electric cart puller, to drag the forklift out of the way. So I contacted the boss and told him to get me a payment slip to go get the tank filled at a fuel station. He came down with the form and the representative. He was all smiles and thanks for the purchase of bulk computers and hardware, but that changed when he spotted his BMW. He was pissed and threatened my job, demanded to my boss I get fired. I just looked at my boss and said, we should look at the security cameras. When my boss reviewed the security footage, he pointed out that I did ask him to move and park elsewhere. He then looked at me and said, thanks for another day. See you tomorrow. The rep wanted the car down immediately. I said, we can't. The propane tank for the forklift is empty, and gas delivery is tomorrow at 6 a.m. My boss handed me the pay slip for refiling the forklift tank. He said to get the gas in the morning. The rep spat some more obscenities and said this will be tagged onto the bill if his car was damaged. He said it won't take much more than a postage stamp to send his boss the footage of him obstructing their loading dock, and then my boss looked at him and tapped the sign that said, this is a loading dock. Park at own risk. We are not liable for towing or moving your vehicle. Fines apply. The next day. After detaching the tank from the forklift, I lugged that bugger to my car and drove off to get it filled. Upon returning with a charged tank of liquid work juice for the forklift, I started that bugger and got to moving the BMW down from its perch and ready for the rep to collect. So it's 6:30 a.m. and he has not arrived, so I decided to place this thing in the nearest accessible parking spot, on the street, ticketed spot, as our car park was not open yet. It was the only safe place available. I contacted my boss and told him and said, call the rep, it's ready for collection. It's in spot XX on the parking meter line. He responded with an okay. Then I got to work sending off the pallets for the day. It was a half-shift day for me. Now, as for Mr. Representative, he did manage to collect his car before it was ticketed for not feeding the meter, and I heard through my boss the rep got chewed out and screwed out of his sales bonus for acting like a dick. Duck, I miss that boss. The next one is an entitled People's Story. My mom and I were talking recently about the work she's been doing in the yard. Mom was widowed just under a year ago and is 78. Her neighbors are 15, 20 years younger than she is. The properties are both double lots, with the open, no-house lots next to each other with a fence separating them. Neighbor's house, when they bought it, it has been a few years, was advertised with the large yard being one of the selling features. So there is an invasive plant that has moved into the open lot on Mom's land. As Mom is trying to remove it from her land, a task that involves a chainsaw, she finds that one of the hearts of the thing is on next-door neighbor's open lot. Now, to get rid of this plant, you have to go to the heart and put this pretty expensive weed killer, $25 for a small container. Neighbors have pretty much let their lawn go because they don't enjoy doing yard work. Okay, so why did you buy a house with an extra large lot? They both have bad backs and can't afford to hire the yard work done, but could afford to replace a perfectly functional pickup truck with a fully tricked-out supersized truck. Living in town, I live in a more rural area and the only people I know with trucks that big are actual farmers, but they are perfectly willing to let my mom go onto their extra lot to eradicate the invasive plant, which needs to be done or Mom's efforts on her own yard are going to be never-ending, and she's trying to get the yard into a state of no-to-low maintenance. This had been a long, ongoing project that my parents had been working on, gradually replacing grass yard with mulch and ornamental rocks, ground cover that doesn't spread by underground runners, and hangout spots like a bench swing or a little mini patio that's big enough for 2 chairs and a small round table. Good place to hang out while sipping on lemonade. And of course, they're not willing to help out with purchasing more of the weed killer. So yeah, they're expecting my 78-yo mom to spend hours and money for the weed killer and the gas for the chainsaw, on their property just so the invasive weed doesn't return to mom's yard, all while not doing a thing to help physically or financially, not even clean up. And of course, mom's income went down after dad died because his social security stopped after his death. There's other retirement money that's still coming in, but that was a big drop in household income. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.